Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and today I'm going to be talking about nothing in particular. It has been a while since I last recorded a video and I will just go straight in and say why. I don't know why I believe that a fortnight is a long time to go between videos, considering when I first started this channel I would only record a video every other Friday, which was the Friday I happened to have off work. Did I do it any other day? No, so I'd wait until everybody had left the house, I'd come upstairs, and I would record with, well, in a similar setup to what I have now, placing you on top of a load of books, and then sitting there, and yeah, either way, time moved on, and I tried to create some sort of schedule, and I recognised when my family wouldn't be at home, so started making videos in the morning when they weren't here, when the most light was about. And then I just purchased a lamp from work, and now if people are at home I don't particularly mind. So 2 weeks now, when I particularly like doing booktube and I like keeping up to date with people, 2 weeks feels like a very long time. Admittedly, I have just finished Vlogmas, so there were 25 videos there for people to watch. I talked about feeling somewhat overwhelmed during Vlogmas. I should probably go back. So in 2018, I arrived at work one morning and the cat wanted letting in. And I decided to take this as a sign to write. And because of this, I ended up recording a writing vlog. Getting into this routine of writing every day really helped me finish working on An Heir to Murder. Then, once I'd finished that book in August 2018, I didn't really do much until January 2019, when I properly started working on Doris Ahoy. Finished Doris Ahoy, went back into edits for An Heir to Murder, and then at the start of last year, I began working on Our Doris, which will be the final book in the Our Doris series. At the beginning of this year, I had only got 3 chapters of the final Doris book written. Admittedly, this did amount to 30,000 words. When you added on the extra stuff that I'd written, it amounted to about 50,000 words I wrote last year. Putting that into perspective, I tend to write 100,000 words a year. Whether or not anyone actually sees that 100,000 words is a completely different matter entirely. Sometimes I'm working on the children's book, which is something that happened last year. I would take time out to work on the children's book when I was feeling overwhelmed. Or, as I say, I edit as I go, so I will cut reams and reams of writing. I always plan to treat Christmas like a Christmas break, so that saw me finishing work on the 21st of December, and I was due to go back on the 8th of January. I planned to start properly treating my writing like a 9-to-5 job on the 4th of January. So on the 4th of January, I got up and I recorded a portion for a reading vlog. I recorded a portion for a writing vlog, sorry, and this was an introduction to all the work that I had done. That was the night that our Prime Minister made an announcement. Now, for whatever reason, this time around, I found myself somewhat filled with dread and a stunning amount of sadness that I hadn't anticipated. Tuesday came along and I didn't write that day because I recorded a video of me doing this unboxing. I planned on changing this vlog a bit, maybe not doing it over a week, maybe doing it over a month, and then showing the process of writing the final half of this book. Something else happened on the Wednesday, I believe. That was nothing. I think that was the Wednesday everything happened in America. I don't know why I felt any sort of woe, but I did. This continued into the Thursday. The writing stalled before it had even started. I went back into my books. I disappeared and I chose to avoid the internet because I recognised that what had happened last year when everything was going on in this country related to the pandemic happened, I started just scrolling through the news pages every day from morning to night. I was just on the news pages, constantly updating, constantly checking what was happening in my area, how cases were rising and stuff. So I recognised, let's not do that this time. So I just kind of veered away, steered clear of the internet. And then on the Sunday, I'm just going to go through my entire flame month to explain why I haven't been writing, really. The Sunday, I woke up and I felt like my entire body had a migraine. Now, immediately I thought, because of the way my throat was feeling, it was some sort of laryngitis. I had that, was it 2019? I think it was 2 years ago. And I had a case of laryngitis that ended up becoming tonsillitis, or one of those two. But I kept thinking, I'm not going to the doctors with this. I'm not going to trouble any doctors with this. So I allowed this to keep going and made myself more ill, and eventually ended up with an upper respiratory tract infection, which saw me basically confined to my bed for a fortnight with no voice, which, you know, was fantastic for my family. They finally got some peace. Either way, I showered. I decided I needed to drive my car around because it had been stuck on the street for, well, nearly 3 weeks. And so I thought, oh, I'll just drive down to the end of the dual carriageway, get, you know, like run some air through the thing. Well, I got to the bottom of my road. There were traffic lights, temporary traffic lights. Got down the road and was like, it's been 15 minutes stuck in this traffic. Turned round, came home, parked my car in the drive, and I then decided I just need to go back to bed. So I was looking for a SCART socket. I got a television from work last year. I don't have a TV in my room. I only have one that has a video player in it so that I can watch Dinner Ladies, or we have some old family videos that I like to watch, and other people, you know, sometimes my dad likes to watch the wedding video, you know, of him and my mother. He's not just watching any wedding video. This isn't just like he thought, you know what, I want to watch the episode of Power Rangers where Rita Repulsa finally gets it on with Lord Zed. No, he wants to watch the video of him and my mother getting married. And sometimes I think it's just because his brother's still in that video and his brother died 10 years ago. Sometimes I think it's because he likes to see my mother when she was young and drunk. I don't know. Either way, that's the only television I had. So I start looking for a SCART lead for a DVD player so that I can just sit in my bed all day and watch DVDs. My brother arrives home an hour later. I think maybe he can tell something's wrong because everyone knows that I just hate being confined to my room. I don't mind my room. And I often will come up here and do a bit of work, but for whatever reason, I just feel unsociable. I feel like a moody teenager when I'm not amongst the family. Sometimes you get away from the family, but I think he recognised there was something wrong. He found me a SCART lead, and I stayed in bed and I watched the extended edition of The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey. Famously, I am not a fan of the Lord of the Rings books. They're just a bit dry for my tastes, but they are some of my friends' favourite films. A few years back, The Hobbit came out, and I watched it, and I really enjoyed The Hobbit, the first one. Later that day, I went downstairs and went on my computer and saw that the second film was available to watch online. So I did that. And I'll just continue what I say. Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey. I love this film. I find this an adventurous film that is funny and has this great tone to it that I just appreciate. It feels like a fantasy magic adventure film that for whatever reason, it just appeals to me. The second film, The Desolation of Smaug, has moments that I really enjoy, but overall, I think drags on and doesn't do it for me. Then you get to the Battle of Five Armies, or whatever the full title is, which has, for whatever reason, the ending of the second film is at the start of the third film, and the third film is not this fantastical adventure film anymore. It's very much situated in the same place. It feels like this whole thing could be one extremely long film. it felt a bit like, was it Casablanca or Cleopatra? One of these really classic old films, Gone with the Wind. I recognise that it's probably a good film for maybe exploring tiny facets of mental health. Maybe if we wanted to look at it that way, there are some scenes in there that I particularly like. But for the most part, I like the first film. And had I not been stupendously ill, I would not have watched all 3 films. Over a period of 2 days, I should say, I watched 2 films one day, then the next morning when I got up out of bed, I watched a film on Film 4 called Captain Scarlet. Now that appealed to every single thing that I liked as a child. It was camp. It was this man who comes back and finds out that his land has been stolen, and so he decides that he's just going to fight against this count. It's a bit like Robin Hood. I found out the guy in that did actually go on to play Robin Hood in a few films in the 50s. Sword fighting, horse riding, very predictable, but sometimes when you're ill, you like a bit of predictability from your films. By the Wednesday, I was better. It turned out it was nothing like laryngitis, so I sat down to try and actually properly get this writing done. Look at this. We're nearly 14 minutes in and that's all I've talked about. Anyway, I should say the previous week I actually finally finished writing a chapter I started in September, and I started looking at the way my writing was going, and I mentioned on Twitter that I was feeling a bit ashamed about the fact that I had been writing this chapter since September. People got in touch and mentioned how I'd never tried to write books before, with the world being the way it is now. And I then recognised that September was when I had a lot of overtime. October was Victober, so I was doing vlogs and all of that for that. November, I was off work again, furloughed, and set about going and helping my dad with the pups every day, which took up a lot of my time. December, Vlogmas, and now we're here. But that's not how my brain works. My brain doesn't look at all of this other stuff that I was doing at the time. It just thinks, well, why weren't you doing the one thing that you ought to be doing? Which I suppose if you think about it in a job sort of way, then yeah, why wasn't I? So I finished this chapter and I felt good to have finally finished it and finally worked out how to have finished that chapter. And now I am working on the 5th chapter. And I began to run into a few issues straight away because this book is a bit more plot heavy. I would say that it's a bit more like a novel, whereas I've always called the previous books of monologues, and my original intention with Our Doris was to release it, was that each monologue could be performed for radio over a period of half an hour. This went out the window with the second book when I decided that if it contributed to the plot, then it was okay for the chapters to be longer. Doris Ahoy just threw it out the window, decided it was like 1 hour specials you'd get on the radio. But in terms of Royally Doris, I wrote the first chapter and it was 10,000 words. And I think that Doris Ahoy has influenced the way I write this book, as has An Heir to Murder. With An Heir to Murder, I just wrote that as a solid block of text and then separated it into chapters. And with Royally Doris, I got rid of all my chapter headings because I just did not like them. And I separated it into 3 parts of 3 chapters and 1 final chapter. What has happened is that I was looking back at my plans and I really wanted to see what I was aiming towards, because looking at it in my head, I was looking at 3 novellas making up an entire novel. And so the first part is there, and I feel like the first part really sets the scene as to where we are in terms of where Partridge Muse is at the moment, the kind of dissolution of certain things, and how Doris has come back into this. The second part is a weird one for me because it's an idea I had when I first started this book. Well, Our Doris back in the day. No, this story came about because when I was writing Indisputably Doris, I went back and read Our Doris and noticed that I'd mentioned a certain character, and I thought, well, I want to tie up loose ends a bit, but also this was a topic I'd wanted to write about and I hadn't yet approached it in any way that wasn't jovial or poking fun. And so I've included this, But it's also a way for me to explore the characters' histories more. Finally, properly just reveal who Doris has been to become the person that she was and who she's going to become, the way that the world it might be changing. I wanted to know where this next part was going of 3 chapters as I'm writing the second. And so I was planning out, as I do, a sentence for each thing that needed to happen in this chapter, and then I did the same for the next chapter because it follows on. And I thought, well, let's look at what's happening in the first chapter of the third part. I have never written it down. And all I'd written was Auld Lang Syne, because I remember thinking about some plot where Doris might try and make amends for stuff in the past, and I was like, this doesn't fit anymore. And I have had this concern for a while about how I want the final chapter to happen, but it felt shoehorned in as just another way to make a 10th. And then I recognised something. And the thing I recognised was that it's fine to have a book of 3 parts of 3 and not have the 10th there just because I want to have each book to have 10 stories in. And so I've got rid of this chapter that has followed me around for, when did I start planning Royally Doris? I started planning Royally Doris after Indisputably Doris. So in 2017, I first started writing stuff down, and this Auld Lang Syne chapter has followed me ever since 2017. It's now gone, and as soon as I got rid of that, and I thought about where the story could go, immediately everything clicked, because I've had this plan for ages, and originally there was going to be an Easter egg hunt. Now, I'll point out, in Indisputably Doris, I had plans for stuff that happened. Everything originally happened with each chapter related to a month, as it did in the first book. And then in Indisputably Doris, because of the way I kind of had cliffhangers and stuff, everything happened quite quickly. And so stuff that wasn't going to happen till June ended up happening in, I think, in my head, it ended up being springtime. So Doris Ahoy takes place from June to September in the same year as Indisputably Doris. Royally Doris picks up from October time and will now end in February time, whereas in my head previously, because of the way things had worked out, I had a time skip of 4 months, and I did not want that. So Easter has become New Year's. So the whole plot I had, where it said Auld Lang Syne, is still almost happening, but rather than being some sort of Easter egg hunt, it's now a New Year's party. But then at the same time, it might be Burns night. It might be Burns night. In my head, I've really got to figure it out. I did originally plan on doing a Burns night story. The whole reason for that being that the first time I ever listened to The Archers was on Burns night. This book was heavily inspired by my love of radio plays. And so there we go. Although I will admit I haven't actually listened to The Archers since the start of 2019. So that's just the writing. So honestly, it's the reason I've not been around so much is if you look at the videos I've watched, go to the Other Folks Videos playlist that I have on my channel, because some people's videos I didn't comment on because sometimes I haven't been able to think of comments. Like I say, at the start of last week, I was just watching and not really focusing. My main focus has been to try and do some writing. On the side of this, I've also been hoping to try and get more people to buy my books, just for a bit of added financial help. I also have a Ko-fi or a Ko-fi page. I have an affiliate link to bookshop.org. Just all these things as ways to try and help me earn a bit more money now that I am furloughed. Also, with certain things that have gone on in Britain at the moment, I can't really sell books outside of the UK because I haven't properly figured out all of the little bits, and also because it's more financially viable, I believe, for somebody to purchase my book in Europe off their version of Amazon than it would be to come through my website because of everything that we'd have to pay. But main focus has been writing. I've also been critiquing friends' work, so I spent quite a few hours intensively looking at a friend's work last week, and then somebody got in touch with me through Instagram, so I looked at the first chapters of their work. And I'm beginning to wonder, is there any career in paid critiquing of work? I don't know, actually. I find it difficult to think about accepting being paid for critiques because I've had no qualifications in that. I just have a creative writing degree, and we all know that that means nothing. When I mentioned The Hobbit before and I mentioned the films I was watching, I did actually want to ask for film recommendations, because one of the things I've recognised is I do actually quite like watching films, and something I had planned for this year was just to try and watch one film a week, and perhaps try and watch 52 films, because script writing is something I've done in the past. It was the one thing that I was actually okay at university. Are there any films out there that I ought to watch? Because last year I was talking about a film with somebody and I said, oh, I was planning on watching that, and then discovered that it had actually come out 10 years ago. And I say it with books as well. You'll see me in comments on loads of people's channels. Oh, I've been meaning to read that. Oh, I've been meaning to read that. It's what I do. I'll like create lists in my head, and I just never get around to doing the thing on the list. I never get around to watching, or I never get around to listening to an album or listening to a radio play or reading the book. So if you have a film recommendation for me, then please do put it in the comments, and I will add it to a list that is not ever expansive, because if I keep on going the way that I'm going, I will just continue to watch The Big Lebowski and not watch anything else, or Guardians of the Galaxy, or Hellboy. Maybe even Turbo, a Power Rangers movie. Who knows? In my head a second ago, I thought of something I was going to make. Oh, walking, that's gone out the window. You'd think that being at home more, I would be just taking myself off on walks, going down the canal and whatever. My father bought me wellies. I've used them to walk around Macclesfield Forest with my sister, and then yesterday we went for a walk around the park because Floss is ill. I could go and walk down the canal myself, but I just haven't. Admittedly, there was a bit of snow at the start of the year, but that's why we're in Macclesfield Forest. We did, I think, 2 days there, and then we've done another since. But like, I should be out every single day. But for whatever reason, everyone keeps saying to me, oh, it's really crowded there, it's really crowded, everyone's milling about in the countryside. I'm just like, I don't want to go and risk that. I'm quite happy just to walk up and down the stairs several times a day, hoping that it's going to keep me fit. It's not doing. My weight is kind of stagnating where it is at the moment, but stagnating's better than nothing, isn't it? Just say yes, because don't mention anything else, just say stagnating is fine. I started reading the Barchester... No, I haven't. I started reading Barchester Towers by Anthony Trollope. This Folio Society edition has much better print and spacing on the page for these geriatric eyes. So I keep looking at my Oxford Classics editions I bought in October. I can't bring myself to part with them or sell them at all because I quite like having them there. And I also think that in future they might be a nice thing if I ever want to go somewhere. I could just throw one of them in a bag. Either way, Barchester Towers. I started reading this book yesterday. I've read 100 pages and it's brilliant. I can see why people recommended this series to me for the longest time as a way for me to get into reading Anthony Trollope's works, because here we have the same characters from The Warden with more drama. It's very small village drama, but you're getting an essence of the world at the time, the changing world. It's reminding me of when I was younger and we started going to church for I don't know what reason, because my mother was a spiritualist and this was C of E. We got to this church and my mum mentioned it to the vicar. She said, if you want, I'll go and wait in the car. The kids can come in with my friend. And he said, no, it's all the same God, isn't it? But because of his forward-thinking views, a few older members of the congregation got rid of him. I didn't like Sunday school, and he'd allowed me to sit in the actual service because I didn't really make much noise. I was quite quiet, so he allowed it because I hated Sunday school. Then the old guy who, like, they got rid of him and they replaced him with this old guy. All I remember about him is beard. And he said that I'd have to go to Sunday school. And I was like, do you know what? If God's going to force me to go to Sunday school, he can jog on me. And I just didn't go back. The last time I entered a church was for my cousin's children's christening. I didn't recognise what I was wearing, and I walked in with the devil on my hoodie. So I spent the entirety of the christening sat like this to try and hide the fact that I had a great big devil on my bleeding hoodie, and I'd just walked into a church. But yeah, Barchester Towers is really just inspiring me to read more and showing me more of Trollope's prose that I didn't really get to see in The Warden. The Warden is definitely an introduction to this book, but this book has more humour, more characterisation, more fantastic descriptions of the way that people look. And also, this edition has some very nice illustrations. If I could find one now, that would be great. But we'll go with this one here. I don't think you can see that. That's no good. Oh well, I tried. Otherwise, I also started watching WandaVision on Friday, and I rather enjoyed it. It reminded me of the classic American sitcoms I used to watch with my grandmother, and that was fun, and I like the weird twist that it may be related to some stories that I read when I was younger, when I was back in my big Marvel Comics phase, spending a lot of money I didn't have. And I will be interested to see how this continues. I suppose I should also mention RuPaul's Drag Race. I'll start with the American edition first. I am not sure I'm the fondest of this format of having the queens perform big numbers in their first week, because it does feel like a finale defining moment. And I think it's great to see the people's personality, see how they introduce themselves, and allows them more screen time so that perhaps people can build a better perception of who they are, because I think that often with this show, you aren't getting to see them at their most creative, you're not getting to see them at their best, you're getting to see what the show wants from them, which is fine, but it does give a false impression as to the work these people put in and who they are outside of this microcosm. But having this, what I would call like finale defining, then in the next week replacing, all they're doing is an acting challenge, I'm like, oh, it feels a bit of a letdown, and it's like we've already seen that they can do this, so and then Drag Race UK. I disagree with the bottom two from the first episode. Originally, I didn't think much of the David Bowie look from the first episode, but then I saw it on Instagram, and it works much better in the lighting on Instagram and looks more fitting than it did in this brightly coloured pink studio under studio lights on the television. I still don't like the hair. That's all I can say, but I don't think it was bottom two material. I think the wrong person went home. Personally, even after, I just think that it would have worked better to do what they do on Strictly and allow people a pass to the next week. Or say who's perhaps the one going home and say, but it's actually held over to next week, so you'll just be in the bottom two next week instead. Or something like that, just so we can see more personality, see how they work more. Very popular person outside of the show. Very talented person. And didn't get to see that, and I'm disappointed. But that's my thoughts on Drag Race. It's all subjective, isn't it, really? This week will probably be much of the same, of me trying to work on the final Doris book, some reading thrown in there. I have had the confirmation that I am furloughed until the 1st of March. Should it last longer, I'll lose a week's holiday. But hopefully, fingers crossed, the way everything's going, I'll be back in March. Obviously, this is a uncertain time for everyone who is currently working in a small business in the UK, and despite the fact that we are a charity, we are also a business, so you do worry about the way things are going to go. But I cannot do anything about that, and since I can't do anything about that, I try and avoid thinking about it. It's just the way I've got to live life, really. Anyway, I am going to go and disappear, drink a cold cup of tea and go and wash a strainer. And I'm not sure when I'll see you again. Cell City, when I see thee. If you want to talk about any of the things I've talked about today, then please feel free to do so in the comments. If you're in the UK and would like to purchase my books, then I always leave a link to my website in the description, but they're also available from Waterstones and Amazon in most countries, and they will handle shipping. If you are overseas, it's probably better to go to Amazon. Also available on Kindle. Don't usually say that. Should also point out that at some point last week I was at 800 subscribers, but a few of those people have already jumped ship, so alas, alack, and all that. If you are wanting to stick around for the incredibly poor quality content and the repetition of my clothing, hashtag outfit repeater, then thank you. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.